you're never going to be able to meet and grow and learn from others unless you try. And so we have this amazing world out there where we can connect with somebody who's doing something really fascinating around on the other side of the world. And so take advantage of that. There's a lot of great tools out there, and there are a lot of great organizations supporting veterans.
You're listening to the 7 Echo Podcast, brought to you by 7 Eagle Group, the place where we highlight inspiring and interesting United States military veterans who have found a successful civilian career after trading in their uniforms.
Hey everyone, it's Rich from 7 Echo Podcast. Today I'm joined by Zack Baddorf. He's the founder and director of Military Veterans in Journalism, a nonprofit with the goal of placing more veterans into newsrooms. Zack joined the United States Navy in 2001 and served until 2006 as a journalist, where he deployed across the Middle East and Asia, reporting on military activities in those areas. Zack attained the rank of a non-commissioned officer and was discharged honorably from the military. Zack, thanks for joining us today. Appreciate your time, and let's just get right into it. So basically what we talk about here on this podcast is transitions, military to civilian transitions, how service members and veterans approach that, and what their experience was afterwards. And ideally, we like to talk to veterans who had successful transitions and are now in nice places in life where they can lend their advice to junior guys who are about to get out. So what was your transition out of the Navy like?
Yeah, well, I wouldn't describe it as successful. That transitions are rough. And I think part of it is you don't know what you don't know. I mean, I joined the military when I was 18 years old in 2001. And all I knew was you advance in your ranks bit by bit, and then you move on, tells you. And then I got out of the military and I thought, well, I should be able to apply for a job based on my qualifications and get a nice setup, and life will be just as easy. And it wasn't. It was a lot tougher than that. And a lot of it, so I was, when I was in the military, I was doing photo, video, radio, print reporting about the military for the military as public affairs, basically. And I thought those skills would be easily transferable, that I could get a job in journalism doing photo, print, radio, video. So I applied for jobs not at the New York Times, but at outlets in places like Kansas and Florida and Texas. So I wasn't aiming huge, but I just had no luck. And retrospectively, if I look back and think about what I did wrong, I had no network at all, basically. I had no mentors to guide me or to connect me to folks or to tell me, hey, you should be looking at this or this or this. And so it basically set me up for failure. And my experience in the transition program, the TAPS or TAP, whatever they call it, it wasn't very helpful for me. I assume that they've improved over the years, but I basically was, one day I was in, the next day I was out and looking for work, and it was rough. Not a sob story. Over the years, I've had some incredible opportunities, and I ended up working as a freelance journalist for the past nearly 15 years, doing some amazing work that I'm incredibly proud of. And so most recently, I lived in the Central African Republic, where I did reporting for the New York Times, Associated Press, Guardian, all the things that you can imagine. And I've had some amazing experiences. And I've also had some full-time employed work as well, that I've, again, working at CENTCOM as a contractor, working in Afghanistan, working in South Sudan for a nonprofit, who's in the Peace Corps, a bunch of things, again, that I'm really lucky that I've just been able to do. And so it's just taken time for me to learn a little bit more about how to be more gainfully employed, to gather some skills, to build my network. And really, the transition, as I said, was a rough one, but I know other people are going through these challenges as well, especially as they try to break into journalism. And so that ultimately led to me and my co-founder founding Military Veterans in Journalism to give the sort of opportunities and build the network and provide the mentorship that I just didn't have. And so that's what one of the things that I'm focused on today I'm a volunteer in this organization. It's not what I do full time, but it's something that I'm really passionate about, and we're taking steps in the right direction to create some amazing opportunities for our fellow veterans.
For sure. Yeah. And I think you hit on an important point, which is that when veterans exit the military, especially if the job that you're going for is what you were trained to do and performed in the military, you kind of naturally think as yourself as a shoe-in. I mean, it's not like you're coming from being an infantryman to, trying to be an engineer or something. You're doing the same thing outside that you did inside. And it's pretty disheartening, I think, as you alluded to, when you don't get offered that position that you're qualified for, but nobody's willing to give you the opportunity for it, because maybe I think one of the issues is translating kind of the amount of responsibility that you had and the amount of impact that you had on worldwide operations just at the age of 18 or 19, 20 years old, that people just understandably so can't fathom on the civilian side because they haven't ever been exposed to it. And maybe that's something that needs to be worked on a little more. And I think that Military Veterans in Journalism kind of tries to do that for newsrooms and media organizations, to try to kind of teach them, hey, this is how you should interact with veterans, and
Sure.
This is what they could afford to your organization.
Yeah, I spent a lot of time thinking about this, because the goal of our organization is to really, again, provide these opportunities, get veterans in the door, get them employed. And I've been trying to figure out what is it that what are some of the barriers? And I think there are systemic ones on both sides. I'm still trying to figure this out, but on the military side, I just think in a broad sense, I think, especially for those of us who just do one enlistment or one term as an officer or whatever it is, I think we're kind of set up for failure in the way that we are. Everything is basically spoon-fed for us. And if that's all you know, if they're taking care of your health care, taking care of your advancement, taking care of your next assignment, all these things, I think it sets you up to believe, at least me as an 18-year-old, that this is just the way that life is, that it's based on your merit and based on your ability to do the job. And it's just not that way. It's not. And I think that ultimately, when I think about my contemporaries who went to college, did an internship, got a staff job, that's a more traditional path that a lot of these people can understand.
Right.
And so when you talk to an HR person at a large outlet, or you talk to a managing editor of a big outlet, they're used to that conventional, normal thing that people do when they want to get into journalism. They graduate from high school, they go to university, they have internships, they build a little portfolio, and they network right away with the professors who help them get these things. And then they're able to plug into these outlets and get a job. It's just the traditional path. And when we veterans come at them with something totally different, we're already doing the work, and maybe we even already have a degree, but maybe we studied in Japan, for example. We have the knowledge, but we don't necessarily have the advocates for us. Right. So I think there's a few things, again, that Military Veterans in Journalism is focusing on that I think is that educational piece, advocating for vets so that the organizations, the newsrooms, whatever, know and understand what veterans are bringing to the table, and makes them think about us also in terms of diversifying their organizations. Because I think and this gets to another sort of area, when we think about diversity, I think we should think about race, ethnicity, geography, experiences. All these things are really important, and they bring value to the organizations where veterans are going to be working. So it's a lot of things that we're working on. And a lot of challenges. These are systemic things that we're not going to be able to solve, but we can do our part to try to provide some opportunities again to overcome them.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that's probably one of the biggest focuses, not only for military veterans in journalism, but for organizations who work in talent acquisition and talent management for military personnel, like Seven Eagle, or any other placement firm who deals with veterans daily and says, I mean, they act as that middle person at no cost to the veteran, which is awesome for veterans, but a lot of veterans don't even know about it. To go to the employer and say, well, this is what we can offer you. And, and having that advocate for you is huge. But I think we've spoken about this before. There's about 40,000 veteran service organizations out there. And within all the noise, you still have people who are leaving TAPS, the transition program. And, they come out and they have no clue all of the things that are available to them. And then they just go back to where they entered service from. And they kind of just try to figure things out as if they don't want to ask for help, or maybe they're too proud, to look into any of these resources. So something that you brought up earlier, which I think is one of the big takeaways here, is network. I mean, you need to have, just like you had, battle buddies or whatever you call them, people in your team or your squad or your platoon. You have to have that when you get out too. I mean, maybe it's not 10 people, but, one or two that you can kind of drop a line to and be like, hey, what do I do right now? I'm kind of lost here. Or I keep running into a wall, that's huge to have that network afterwards, which I think MVJ provides and a bunch of other places as well. So yeah, and I think it's important to grab the veteran. I think there's a crucial period of time. I think it's probably 1 year pre-exit from service and probably 1 year post. And I think, people certainly go through difficulties in transition more than 1 year post. Some deal with it for life, but I think that's that crucial period where you could really grab somebody and say, hey, let me help you find a job, or let me help you, successfully enter this field that I just, I went through what you went through already. I mean, it's the same as being a non-commissioned officer in the military, and you have a new private who's like, hey, Sarge, what I just got a car financed for 17.5%. It's a great deal, right? Or, I'm thinking about getting married before this deployment. What do you think? I mean, you're doing the same thing. It's mentorship, and, just both civilians now. So
Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. So we talked a lot about your transition, the difficulties of your transition. Let's talk about how you applied the skills that you learned in the military to, what you eventually did. I mean, obviously you innovated, adapted, and overcame. You had some, mental agility there. I think those are all things picked up from the military, or, naturally, that you have and refined in the military. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, I mean, my years in the military were really foundational to me in terms of how I approach work, how I approach responsibility, all of these things. I would not be the same person if I had not joined the military. That is for sure. And when I was 19 years old, showing up at Yokota Air Base in Japan, working for American Forces Network Tokyo, I was suddenly given the opportunity and the responsibility to fly to a place like Alaska or Australia or the Philippines, because it was a regional news center. So we went across Asia and the Pacific. And so I was going to these places in Nepal and Cambodia, working with the embassy, working with nonprofit organizations, working with military commanders at very senior levels at a very young age. And it was just me. In this particular environment, we had a lot of responsibility, and I had some amazing mentors in this field, which really helped hone my skills. To be able to show up in a place like Cambodia, have my pre-production work done, execute on the ground with a really strong schedule that maximize the time and resources that we have, go out and capture some amazing stories, and then come back and on a very tight schedule, turn them around and for the post-production side of things and make these stories turn into that are distributed around the world on the American Forces Network. And it's a lot. It's a lot of responsibility, and I learned so much of being able to go through that entire process, take the responsibility, do the planning that's necessary, be a better communicator, all these skills that are associated with journalism that I apply today in my own work. And you're given these sort of situations where you just have to adapt, overcome, and think strategically, plan things out. It's a lot of things that I took from my military experience.
Yeah, and I think it's funny because I think quite often service members don't think about them in that way when you're doing it. You're not like, okay, now I have to strategically think and be mentally agile. And, maybe when you're like your NCOER or whatever your evaluation report comes up, you're like, oh, okay, I did this. But like, those things are just, you're in the hot seat and you're going. And when you get out, things slow down a bit and you're like, but when they pick back up, you're ready to jump in and you just, something switches and you just go right back to it. So I think really good points. Kind of wrapping up here, what advice would you have for service members who are either contemplating transition or have just gotten out? They don't really know what they're going to do or what resources they should tap into prior to be most successful. What would you say based on your experience?
Well, first of all, if you're interested in journalism, check out Military Veterans in Journalism, mvj.net work on the web. And we've got a lot of great resources and we can help you along that path. But if you're trying to figure out what your path is, that requires some deep introspection. And there are some great books out there. I remember reading What Color is Your Parachute, for example, but I'm sure there's more recent ones as well that can help you. It's basically a lot of soul digging. What are the sort of things that you enjoy doing? Where can you see yourself in 5, 10, 20 years? Try to figure out what the end state is. And again, military people are pretty good at planning, broadly speaking. So try to figure out what the end state is, and then think about how you can get there. And I think a lot of what that planning also involves is talking to other people who are already there. In my experience, after a few years of doing this, I found that a lot of people are willing to share and they're willing to help out. And so I still do this practically every week, maybe even every other day. I'm on LinkedIn, adding people I don't know, searching for things and people who are doing really interesting work. I connect with them, I chat with them, I build relationships with some and not with others. And maybe some people don't accept my requests, but you're never going to be able to meet and grow and learn from others unless you try. And so we have this amazing world out there where we can connect with somebody who's doing something really fascinating around on the other side of the world. And so take advantage of that. There's a lot of great tools out there, and there are a lot of great organizations supporting veterans like us. So maybe it's not Military Veterans in Journalism because you're not interested in journalism, fine. But there are, as you said, Rich, there are 40,000 some veteran organizations out there, and in all likelihood, a few of them are going to be able to give you a few things that will help you along your journey.
For sure. Well, we've been kind of sort of doom and gloom with a lot of these challenges and hardships. What's some hopefulness that you can lend to somebody getting out? What's the best part about being a civilian besides not having to wake up for PT in the morning?
Well, or cleaning toilets on a ship for weeks at a time. Yeah, that's, I would say that it's a big world out there, and there are a lot of amazing things you can do, whether that means working for the government as a civil servant, working for a nonprofit, working for a company. I think a lot of veterans, I've certainly found, are driven to have a mission and to serve in some way in their life. And there are a lot of ways to do that. It doesn't just have to be the military. You can find your purpose and you can find some some value and some way to continue to give back to your country, to your world, to your community. And so I would just say that it's just a matter of figuring out what it is you're going to do, and how you can best contribute. There are a lot of amazing options out there. So just keep looking.
For sure. Yeah. And I think the takeaway from that is the freedom. You have the freedom to do whatever you want. You're no longer a private, and you can't reach out to a CEO who's the equivalent of a brigade commander. I mean, you could get on LinkedIn, like you said, and reach out to anybody because you're a civilian, you're Joe now, not, private so-and-so, like, or specialist or sergeant or colonel or whatever you were. I mean, get out there and put yourself out there and be vulnerable a little bit. And I think that goes a long way. So awesome. Well, I appreciate your time, Zack. And once again, mvj.network is where you can find more about military veterans and journalism. They're all over social media. And Zack, anything you'd like to leave off with?
No, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Great. Thanks for joining, man.